A single seed crop once sustained empires across 3 continents, fed armies through brutal winters, and contained more complete protein per acre than any livestock operation. Yet modern agriculture has nearly erased it from cultivation. This grain was so valuable that conquistadors burned entire fields and executed farmers who grew it, attempting to destroy the food security of civilizations they could not conquer. The Aztec Empire called it huautli and considered it sacred, not for religious superstition, but because it allowed survival in conditions where wheat and corn failed. Today, this remarkable seed is dismissed as a weed in most regions, growing wild along roadsides while industrial agriculture struggles with synthetic fertilizers and depleting soils. The biology of this plant reveals why ancient cultures treated it as irreplaceable, and why its near extinction represents one of agriculture's greatest losses. The structural design of amaranth defies the limitations that constrain conventional grain crops. While wheat and rice require specific climate windows and abundant water, this plant evolved in the volcanic highlands of Central America, where conditions shift dramatically between seasons. Its root system penetrates twice as deep as corn, accessing moisture and minerals beyond the reach of shallow-rooted competitors. The leaf structure utilizes C4 carbon fixation, a photosynthetic pathway so efficient that it produces biomass in heat that would wilt traditional grains. Each plant generates a seed head containing up to 500,000 individual grains, each smaller than a poppy seed, yet packed with complete protein chains containing all 9 essential amino acids. This biological architecture allowed ancient farmers to harvest 3,000 pounds of grain per acre using only hand tools and observation of natural cycles, with 0 synthetic inputs. Analysis of amaranth grain reveals a nutritional profile that challenges the foundations of modern food production. The protein content ranges from 14.18% higher than wheat at 12% and comparable to dried beef, yet requires no animal husbandry, no grazing land, no slaughter. More significantly, this protein is complete, containing lysine at levels 3 times higher than wheat and maize. Lysine deficiency creates the primary nutritional gap in grain-based diets, forcing dependence on animal products or synthetic supplementation. Ancient Mesoamerican cultures understood this empirically, combining amaranth with beans and squash to create nutritionally complete meals without meat. The grain also contains squalene, a compound normally obtained from shark liver, which supports immune function and cellular repair. Modern nutritional science validates what indigenous knowledge preserved through millennia of cultivation. Environmental stress that destroys conventional crops activates survival mechanisms in amaranth that actually increase productivity. Drought triggers deeper root expansion and accelerated flowering, ensuring seed production even when water becomes scarce. Heat above 95 degrees that wilts corn and wheat stimulates faster photosynthesis in amaranth leaves, converting harsh conditions into growth advantages. Frost tolerance allows cultivation in highland regions at 12,000 feet elevation, where few food crops survive. Ancient Andean farmers grew varieties that withstood nighttime temperatures near freezing, then produced grain through short mountain summers. This climatic flexibility meant empires could maintain food security across diverse territories, from coastal deserts to mountain peaks, using a single crop. Modern agriculture, dependent on narrow climate ranges and intensive irrigation, has abandoned this adaptive capacity in favor of crops requiring constant environmental control. The mineral uptake efficiency of amaranth allows productive growth in degraded soils where conventional grains fail. While modern wheat requires nitrogen fertilizer applications of 100-200 pounds per acre, amaranth produces comparable yields in soil with minimal nitrogen availability. The deep taproot accesses phosphorus and potassium locked in lower soil layers, unavailable to shallow-rooted crops. Mycorrhizal associations with soil fungi extend nutrient acquisition even further, creating a biological mining operation that extracts minerals without synthetic chemistry. Ancient agricultural texts from the Aztec codices describe amaranth cultivation on exhausted maize fields, where it restored soil structure while producing food. The plant's biomass, when returned to earth, rebuilds organic matter faster than grain crops due to its rapid growth cycle and dense leaf production. This self-sustaining quality made amaranth the foundation of regenerative farming systems that maintained soil fertility across centuries without external inputs. Historical agricultural practices reveal sophisticated cultivation techniques that maximized amaranth productivity without modern tools. Aztec farmers used chinampas, artificial islands built from lake sediment and aquatic plants, where amaranth grew alongside maize and beans in precise polyculture arrangements. The shade tolerance of amaranth allowed underplanting beneath taller crops, creating vertical food production in limited space. Harvesting occurred in stages, with farmers removing outer seed heads first while allowing inner flowers to mature, extending the harvest window across weeks. Threshing employed simple techniques: dried seed heads placed in woven baskets, beaten with sticks, then winnowed by tossing in the wind. The tiny seeds separated from chaff through their density, settling while lighter material blew away. These methods required no machinery, no fuel, no electricity, yet processed tons of grain with minimal labor. The knowledge systems that developed these techniques matched modern agricultural science in precision while remaining accessible to individual farmers. The systematic destruction of amaranth cultivation represents a deliberate agricultural genocide. When Spanish conquistadors encountered Aztec grain stores filled with amaranth, they recognized it as a cornerstone of indigenous food independence. Colonial authorities banned its cultivation, destroyed fields, and punished farmers who maintained seeds. The religious ceremonies involving amaranth dough figures provided justification, but the true motive was food control. Populations dependent on imported wheat became easier to dominate than those maintaining traditional crops adapted to local conditions. Within 2 generations, knowledge of amaranth cultivation largely disappeared from regions where it had been dietary foundation for millennia. A few isolated communities in the Andes and remote Mexican highlands preserved seeds and growing techniques, but commercial agriculture abandoned it entirely. This pattern repeated globally as colonial powers imposed crop monocultures, erasing regional food systems built on climate-adapted native plants. Despite near eradication from cultivation, amaranth persists as a wild plant across multiple continents, demonstrating remarkable evolutionary resilience. Roadside populations in North America, descended from escaped cultivation, exhibit the same high protein content and stress tolerance as ancient varieties. These wild stands appear as tall, red-stemmed plants with distinctive tassel-like seed heads, often reaching 6 to 8 feet in height by late summer. The classification as a weed obscures their value, yet a single wild amaranth plant produces enough seed to plant a quarter acre the following season. Foragers who recognize these populations can harvest pounds of grain from patches dismissed as invasive species. The seeds require no processing beyond drying and simple threshing, edible immediately after harvest or stored for years in sealed containers. Wild amaranth genetics contain adaptation to local conditions built through generations of natural selection, potentially superior to cultivated varieties for regional growing. Re-establishing amaranth cultivation requires understanding its ecological requirements and traditional growing methods. Seeds broadcast directly onto prepared soil in late spring, after final frost, germinate within 4 to 7 days when soil temperature exceeds 65 degrees Celsius. The initial growth appears slow as energy focuses on root establishment, but after 3 weeks, visible expansion accelerates dramatically. Thinning plants to 10 to 12-inch spacing prevents competition while maintaining enough density to suppress weeds through canopy shading. Water requirements remain minimal once established, with weekly deep watering sufficient except in extreme drought. The grain heads develop through midsummer, shifting from green to deep burgundy or gold depending on variety. Harvest timing occurs when seeds release easily from heads when rubbed between fingers, typically 90 to 120 days from planting. A small backyard plot of 100 square feet can yield 10–15 pounds of grain annually, enough to supplement diet with complete protein across winter months. The culinary versatility of amaranth grain extends far beyond simple porridge, despite its small seed size. Whole seeds toast in a dry pan until they pop like miniature popcorn, creating a crunchy texture for salads or mixing into nut butter. Grinding produces flour that blends with wheat for bread, adding protein and a subtle nutty flavor while improving moisture retention. Ancient recipes combined amaranth flour with honey or agave to create dense, long-storing cakes that sustained travelers and warriors. The grain cooks as a hot cereal in 15 minutes, absorbing 3 times its volume in water to create a creamy consistency without dairy. Young leaves, harvested before flowering, provide greens richer in protein and minerals than spinach, edible raw or cooked. This dual-purpose quality meant ancient farmers obtained both grain and leafy vegetables from a single planting, maximizing caloric return per square foot of growing space. Preserving amaranth genetics for future seasons requires minimal intervention due to the plant's natural seed longevity. Allowing several plants to fully mature and dry on the stalk ensures the next generation, with seed heads cut and hung in paper bags to catch falling grain. Each plant produces such abundant seed that saving 5 to 10 heads provides enough for extensive planting the following year. The seeds remain viable for 4 to 7 years when stored in cool, dry conditions, far longer than most vegetable seeds. This durability made amaranth ideal for food security, with communities maintaining living seed banks through simple storage. No special equipment, no refrigeration, no desiccants required, just paper envelopes or cloth bags kept dry. Cross-pollination occurs readily between varieties, so isolation matters for those seeking to maintain specific traits, but for basic food production, mixed genetics often increase adaptability. The ease of seed saving placed food sovereignty directly in farmers' hands, requiring no annual purchases from distant suppliers. The re-emergence of amaranth in modern cultivation represents more than nostalgia for ancient crops. It addresses fundamental limitations in current food systems. As climate instability increases, crops dependent on precise conditions and heavy inputs become liabilities rather than assets. Amaranth offers a proven alternative, tested across centuries and climates, requiring minimal resources while delivering superior nutrition. Small-scale growers incorporating it into home gardens gain food independence unavailable through commodity agriculture. The knowledge required remains accessible, preserved in historical texts and surviving traditional practices, waiting for those willing to observe and apply it. Each backyard crop becomes an act of agricultural archaeology, recovering what was deliberately erased. The seed still contains the same biological potential that sustained empires, ready to function the moment conditions allow. Subscribe to discover more forgotten crops that challenge modern agricultural assumptions and offer practical paths toward genuine food security.